You know, you can go on Amazon and you just buy something. You know, like, oh, want a book? Gonna buy it. You just buy it, right? You read the reviews and you're like, oh wow. And you got your Amazon Prime little deal. You've been watching those documentaries, so it's gonna be there in a couple days. That's cool. That's cool. It's gonna be there at a good price too. I mean, if you can get over the fact that every single person in that factory is fucking exploited through the roof, then yeah, no, that's great. That's great. But it used to be. I mean, well, okay. What I did when I was growing up, you go over to Barnes and Noble or Borders, whatever it's called. I don't know what the difference is, and you judge a book by its cover. You judge a book by its cover, and you roll the dice, and that was pretty much my MO for. I mean, most of it. Most of my reading career is. I just go there. I find a book that that looks interesting, and you start realizing with the Warhammer books that you want a picture that's interesting but not too interesting, I guess, for the cover. And it was pretty hit or miss, but mostly hit. Mostly hit just because Warhammer kind of has this kitsch sort of aspect to it. So a fanboy such as myself will rarely be disappointed. I think I've been disappointed, like just not not disappointed, but just not thrilled about it. What I was reading about, maybe just only a dozen times, maybe 8 times, and that's easily worth a dozen and dozens of novels. But one of those books is The Last Chancers. And I mean, you can tell this one's been through it. This one's been through it too. It's like a fucking biplane or some shit. But you know what? I cherish this. I cherish this book so much. Why? Because it has my favorite character. My favorite character in Warhammer, and maybe my favorite character of all time, which is Lieutenant Cage. We'll get to why Lieutenant Cage is so good. We'll get to why he's so good. But really, the reason I want to talk to you today is because I went to the bookstore, Barnes & Noble, or Borders, or whatever it is called, and I found Armageddon Saint. And I was a little bit curious, because how can you have a Last Chancers book without Cage? See, Cage ends up sacrificing himself at the end of Annihilation Squad. And this is meaningful. This is absolutely meaningful because he's built himself up as a character through the first 2 books. Not as, oh, I'm a good guy, I'm going to defeat the bad guys, but rather, I'm a bad guy and I'm worse than you, so let's play. Yeah, these are they're from the Black Library. I like talking about just some of what I've gone over in reading, and the last time I read this book was like 10 years ago, and so this shows up on the shelf, and I'm like, wow, I have to compare. I have to let you all know if the consistency is still there, if it's still there. And before I do that, I've got to ramble up and lead up to it. This is actually an omnibus, 3 different books. And the first book is what makes everything so good. It's just like, why a lot of people like Star Wars. Well, they like Star Wars because of Star Wars, when it was just, this very well-defined thing. They pretty much just go through the galaxy on adventures. It's fun. They're prisoners, and they've been given a chance at earning a pardon. And so they start off at 40,000 strong, and they just get whittled down and down and down and lower and lower and lower. By the time the book starts, you only have a couple companies. I will always remember the way Kill Team starts, just because it's so memorable. I don't know. There's a tribesman, and he's just adorned in all this gear, and he sees a Tyranid drop pod descend from the heavens, and he's just in awe. He's just like, oh, like he's horrified by it, and then he's even more horrified about what the Last Chancers do to the lictor that comes out of it, and it's brutal. It's pretty brutal. There's it's a very Starship Troopers-esque sort of scene where they're in this compound, and there's this guy that gets stabbed twice by the two aliens, so he jumps off the compound and grabs him with him. It flirts with being bombastic, the battle scenes, but more so with being clever. And this idea of a victory at battle is typically it's not. I don't know. I typically don't even. I don't feel like an elation, like, oh, they won. Oh, wow. It's like, oh, they got out of there. Now they get to go see the next hellhole. There's and so I guess I'll talk to you about Franks is the best part of this first book. He's just Cage's buddy. He's kind of nondescript. He's just a big man, and I mean, there's a lot of these characters in 40K. Just a big, good guy, kind of like Basanis. They're gonna be there. They're almost on 40K, and so they go to this hideous jungle world, and the jungle world is what will always stick with me. They get there, and there's this colony, and the colony is absolutely abandoned, and they find these strange pods and husks everywhere. And of course, there's just one guy left behind. He's like, well, I don't know where they went, but the captain, he was talking about going to the heart of the jungle. Said it was better there. I don't know why. And during this transition to the heart of the jungle, of course they have to fight giant lizards, and of course it's all stuff that can be dealt with by guns and cunning, but then there's just the jungle. There's just the killability of the jungle. And Franks gets some sort of terrible infection in his lung. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was good. So they're like, well, we can just leave him. That'll work out. And they end up bringing him to the heart of the jungle, and that was awesome. There's this giant tree, and it had been like, I don't even know what it was, but it was convincing all these people to come here and join it. And they were in the branches, and the ones that were like of a lower caste, they were like sucked dry of all their nutrients. But the captain of the colony, he was pumped, like he was almost like godly. And well, they had to they had to get Franks there, then they had to get him to leave, and They go to the snow planet, and Franks dies. Franks, he doesn't die. They try so hard to get him to the snow planet, right? And it's just, he's got this lung, he's got this lung infection, and that's getting exacerbated by the snow planet. You've got these two very different locales. But anyways, the reason Franks is important, all right? I've been rambling for the last 2 minutes about Franks. These locales is they end up going to the last planet they go to. I forget what it's called. And they get strafed. They get strafed by these blitzer bombers, whatever they're called. And there's these Mordians marching up and down the street, and they just get strafed and killed. And everyone's like, stop marching. And they just keep doing it. Cage pretends that he gets hit, and he lets them all leave. And he goes off on his own adventure, but he ends up making it back with them. And it turns out Franks, the guy that Cage basically just promised himself wouldn't let get killed, wandered into a minefield while the rest of them while they were separated. And so it's tragedy. It's very tragic because Franks is constantly on this precipice of is he going to live or is he going to die? Is he going to live or is he going to die? You never really think that he's going to make it till the end because it doesn't seem like anyone's going to make it till the end. I like the idea of them going after this massive bunker, this massive circular bunker, because Franks, no, you don't, and he dies off camera, if you would. So you're just like, oh wow. And in the second book, and so I've been talking about Lieutenant Cage, But the guy in the cover, and I wish I had this zoomed in, but this is Colonel Schaefer, and he's the one in charge. And he talks to Cage in the second book. He's like, "Hey man, look, I'm trying to do a job here, and if you want to go off, slinking around and just having fun, people are gonna die." And that really hit kind of like that was a book and a half of buildup. That was a book and a half of buildup for that. So in short, the first book, a lot of adventure, a lot of cool characters, a lot of great stuff being set up, especially Cage. Cage is just, he's not a good guy, but he's very human. He's a very human kind of a guy. He's just neutral. I know I like to talk so bad about neutral characters, but he's a great neutral character. So moving along. The second book, not as good as the first one. Okay, not as great. Now, mind you, book one starts right here. Book two starts about right here. I got through it, and this is the happy ending. This is the happy ending book. Two people actually get pardons in this one. Two people actually get to finish the mission and leave, which is like, wow. I don't think that happens at all in anything else in the series. After Cage completed his first mission, he because he was a penal trooper and somebody, I don't know why he did this. It would be like if I were to carry around my DD-214 with me everywhere, but he carried his pardon around with him everywhere. I guess because he didn't want to lose it. And so somebody pulled the pardon out of his pocket. He's like, "Oi, you're penal legion scum. You don't deserve to live." And then Cage just punches them all to death or something. It's a bar fight, except more of a bar extermination. Cage, I allow him to do these larger than life physical things because I connect with him. He's almost like Alex DeLarge, where he's constantly giving you not necessarily this like narration. I mean, it's a narration, but instead of it being this like bird's eye view of narration, it's a very intimate, very close understanding to the point where you can pretty much be on Cage's side. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about that, but I guess if you couldn't be on his side, he'd be the villain. So the second book, pretty good book. They fight the aliens, they fight the Tau. You learn some things about the Tau. You learn that since the Tau have 4 fingers, that they use a system of 8 instead of a system of 10, which we have. So, I did some math a few years ago, and math class, Math 100, that was kind of big. It was just such a similar premise to the first one, though. The first one, you're fighting this huge circular bunker, and in the second one, there's like 4 of them. So, I don't know, kind of Star Wars-ish. But the third book is what makes this series worth it. The third book is what makes this series worth reading, okay? And this is why I was kind of like caught between if these 2 novels could even exist in the same with the same consistency, okay? So the third book makes everything worthwhile. Instead of them, they're just scum, they're just this or that. Cage gets possessed. Cage gets possessed by a demon while they're in the warp. And he fights with this possession. In the second book, he fights with I almost want to call it PTSD. It's like a battle fatigue or something. It's terrible. The Mechanicus people say that he had bad gases in his head, but that's weird. They go to Armageddon, and Armageddon's a world beset by the orcs and General von Strab. Or maybe it was Governor von Strab of Armageddon Hive. Instead of trying to keep the orcs at bay, Gazgul Thraka and his merry friends, he lets them in the hive. He lets them all in the hive. And that's where they're sent. They're sent to go kill Von Straub. I mean, seems pretty. Yeah, it seems like a pretty decent goal if there ever was one. But mind you, Cage is still possessed, so he goes and I think he kills a couple members of the team, and then he allies with Von Straub. But the reason this book brings everything together, everything in the entire series together, is at the end. All right, it's a great ending. The book itself, okay, the ending, fantastic. Cage has one moment of clarity, one moment where he can realize what a traitor he is to a squad, to mankind, and to the Emperor. And he jumps. He jumps and he takes Von Straub with him to the very core of the hive. And that, honestly, I was happy to leave it. I was happy to leave it there. I was happy to leave it there because what else is there to do when you spend 3 books building up a character for a redemption arc and it just goes through flawlessly? You know, it's over. It's just over, right? And so that's that. You know, Cage is a bad guy, but he gets to be a good bad guy. So, you know, and it's not like he'd ever find redemption. And yet he does. And yet he does. I think that I'm a very critical person. So I can pick something. It's not really. Okay, there's things I like. There's things I dislike. And then there's everything in between. And this is kind of in between. Okay, no. I like this book. It's a good book. It's a quick read. It's a fun read. And it stays true enough to the characters, the Last Chancers, but it's not a Last Chancers book. The Last Chancers book follows this sort of formula where they make a team, they whittle the team down, they go on a mission, and the Inquisitor reveals himself, or whoever their benefactor or patriarch is reveals himself. It's kind of this formula that goes through in each of these books, okay? And it doesn't really happen, but, you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing at all. Maybe this will be a second trilogy. Maybe I don't know. So, Cage's miraculous survival attracts a cult of desperate followers who believe him sent to the orc-infested world of Armageddon by the God Emperor himself. So, they think so. Cage survives, right? He survives the plunge, and this is big because he's no longer demonically possessed. I don't know how I feel about it. Don't know how I feel about that you. I don't know. So the whole point of it is that it's basically there to show you that the Emperor's looking out for Cage, and he goes back and he just points out all these times he should have died, and then he points out the times that everyone else died and he didn't. And so, kind of like an action movie, I'm from the 90s. I'm just gonna give it a gimme. I just want it to happen. I mean, okay. No, I don't want it to happen. But I'm just curious with what happened. So, some expectations subverted. I expected them. I don't know. I had expectations that don't matter because they didn't end up. So, the Colonel. So Cage captures the Colonel and the Colonel's crew, and very interesting this time around. The Last Chancers, the 13th Penal Legion, even though there's the squad, they aren't really like in the book. They're like supporting characters. They're not just supporting. They're the characters that support the supporting characters. So the Colonel meets Cage. Cage meets the Colonel. Cage takes him to his room. They get in a fight, and then they realize that the orcs, the Uphive orcs, are coming. Now, Cage makes it clear that the Uphive orcs don't really want anything with the Lower Hive orcs, because if they were, the Uphive orcs don't want anything to do with the Lower Hive, because if they were to go to the Lower Hive, they would become Lower Hive orcs, and those Lower Hive orcs suck. They're basically like, I don't know, he almost describes them as a mix between the Gretchen and humans with how malnourished they are. The lower Hive orcs. So Cage has to take and he has like thousands or hundreds of people. I'm not sure what the number is. Basically, all the survivors of Armageddon. He takes them down, and they're running, and they have to escape the orcs. And Cage has an orc. Cage has an orcish compadre. Cage has an orcish compadre. I like the Gretchen mainly just because I like Gretchen as a principal. I think they would have had to do pretty poorly not to find a good Gretchen, or at least a Gretchen that would be funny or interesting. This one is both. It says that there's something around Armageddon, or there's something about the teleportas, or something there that makes the orcs smarter. And so I can kind of understand this, like, this orc who is loyal in a sense to Cage and his followers. I can kind of understand that. I mean, and if you look at the orcs that followed von Straub, if you look at those guys, they were pretty smart. They were pretty smart dudes. They understood Gothic, and they could follow out pretty simple commands. So it wasn't really it's if you bend the rules enough, it's possible. I'm just saying there's a lot of bending, and so there's kind of a really interesting aspect between the Colonel and Cage, because Cage is used to being subordinate to the Colonel. That's just how it goes. But Cage has to be in charge this time. And one of my favorite moments in the book, right? They find these people chained up in the Orcish realms, and they had just been left to rot. And I mean, they were rotting. Their gums were bleeding. He described their teeth as like standalone bunkers. It was terrible. So he ends up getting these people to save them, and the Colonel's like, "You should just shoot them. You should just kill them." And Cage is like, "No, we can save them." And the Colonel's like, "They will slow us down." And the people can't even walk. They're so malnourished. So he has like a dozen people help out these half dozen people move around. And so the orcs come, and you don't even know what happens to them. And Cage is like, that might have got someone killed. He's like, "No, it definitely got someone killed." That was great. So Cage kind of has these Cage has these like balancing acts. Yeah. First of all, he has to. Yeah, am I going to be a leader? He has a chance to just run away from everything. He has a chance to just flee the entire attack. He could do that and just escape. So am I a leader? And then if I am a leader, who am I going to save, and how am I going to save them? That goes to the chained up people. And then I need to assert myself as a leader. And how much can I assert myself as a leader without just killing myself, everyone around? And Cage kind of navigates that last one by just being Cage. He's almost untouchable in this book. His powers are nearly Space Marine level in this book. It's just got a way different tone, and we'll get to that. We'll get to why. We'll get to why that is. And so it's brought up because they end up, and it's kind of nice because they end up going to a Sisters of Battle Fortress monastery, just like in the first book. And they asked the minister, they're like, can you have the Sisters of Battle help us? He's like, I can't do that. I can't tell anyone to fight. The ministerium doesn't do that. So that was kind of a nice tie into the first book. They go to Sisters of Battle monastery, and they help the Sisters of Battle. And yeah, it's got some fun moments. This book's got some fun moments. But he goes to the monastery, and they want to call him a living saint. And the Sisters of Battle are like, no. And luckily, to make it a little less of an issue, the guy that wanted to call him a saint, he ended up dying. He jumped in front of the bullet that would have killed Cage. Oh yeah. So the colonel takes this wild and like wacky loop of like, I'm gonna kill you. Okay, I'll follow you. I should be in charge. Like these three positions flip around a lot, and it seems consistent with the colonel. It seems like the colonel's like meeting a new Cage, or at least someone that calls himself Cage, and he's just like trying to figure out what he's going to do about it. But this gets, I don't know. It's a question that I only need to ask and don't even need to answer. But like, are there Imperial Space Marine saints? Is that possible? I mean, at what point does the power level of an Imperial Guardsman, like, if you got an Imperial Guardsman, let's say he was a saint, right? And he got like elevated up to here, like, what if a Space Marine became a sergeant? Well, like what is the approximate power level there? That's a question to ask. I don't even know what metric or metrics or I would use to measure this. It's just an interesting idea, though. Luckily, it doesn't go too much further than that. There's a couple conveniences here, kind of just like, well, the only guy that was going to make him a saint died. The orcs, the friendly orcs, kind of just like come and go. This is the gripe section here. The friendly orcs kind of come and go just according to convenience of the plot. It's just like when they make it to the Fortress Monastery, like, there's nothing in the world that would make Gav Thorpe think that the Sisters of Battle wouldn't just shoot them and kill them on sight. However, when there's only one Sister of Battle, she doesn't do it. Go figure. And then another, I don't know, something kind of funny is like, oh yeah, oh no, okay. I won't ruin the main plot. It's really MacGuffin-y, though. It's MacGuffin-y to the point. No, I can't give it to him. Okay, wait, look, fine. Here's the plot. Spoiler! So, the reason they're running away from the orcs is because the orcs are running away from the demons. And a very interesting, very flavorful arc in the storyline. They go out and they meet the Nomad Wastes. The Nomad Wastes, I don't know why they're friendly. They kind of just meet the Last Chancer, and they're like, oh, here, come to our village. No, we'll help you. Even after they bring people into the village that commit heinous crimes. Murder. I like them, though, I guess. He didn't make them too weird, but he made them weird enough. So they're like, okay, these people are kind of weird. They had their own mannerisms and this and that. But the reason they were important, and the reason ultimately I think they were included, besides being just another device, is They told the Last Chances about the first war of Armageddon, the very first war, and this was bad not just because Angron came with a bunch of angry demons, just like in this book, but in the first war, following the first war of Armageddon, after Angron was banished or killed or whatever happened to him, the Inquisition killed everyone. They just absolutely killed everyone. Every single person on Armageddon that even witnessed the demons was put to death. Which, I mean, that would be almost more intense than making a war itself. I don't know. I mean, it's an incredible undertaking. It's an absolutely incredible undertaking, and it's horrifying as well. And so that's why they're there, to show what the first war of Armageddon was. And so when they're first fleeing from the orcs, they see a psyker, the weird boy, and the friendly orc, he's like, oh, that's a real Ed Bingo over there. That's what he says, and so Cage is like, oh no, yeah, wow, that guy is powerful, and I kind of dozed off or kind of skipped through sometimes. Gav Thorpe, he's like a mix between Dan Abnett and Graham McNeil. He takes the action of Graham McNeil, and he takes the characters of Dan Abnett. Now, the action is not quite as grandiose. It doesn't get quite a meta or a build-up as with Graham McNeil. It's, instead of like a grand diorama, it's Cage. You just see what Cage sees, and that's fine. That's perfect. So that kind of narrows it down. And then, instead of having like almost a Russian amount of characters, instead of going full on Abnett, Thorpe, he decides that he's going to only go with just a dozen characters. But they're all pretty fleshed out. I can tell you that in the first book, it seemed like the characters just had more like flesh to them. They had like more fat. Then in the second book, it felt like in the first book, I was like in the army with my friends, and in the second book, I felt kind of like an officer looking down on the Last Chancers. And I mean, I guess that just comes down to the fact that's kind of Cage's perspective. He was essentially a Last Chancer, and then he became the first among Last Chancers. But I feel like the characters were just better done in the first one. It's just better done. They do a great job of not being larger than life, but of living. The characters in the second book, they're kind of just like, they need to be there because the book needs them to be there. But also that goes into the fact that Cage specifically requested these people. I really actually like that part of the second book where he finds them because he goes to this penal colony, and the penal colony is great. Okay, the whole penal colony, but I don't even know if it's the second book or a standalone. I think it's actually a standalone. Well, not a standalone, but like a short story, I think. So after the first book, Cage messes up, and he gets dumped on a prison planet. In the second book, he starts off with a squad. So, he starts off finding a squad. So in the middle, he tries to escape the prison planet, and he pretty much does. He makes this messed up. Attempt by like stabbing his cellmate, and then he goes on a stabbing spree. But eventually gets to this point where he's just like, wow, even if I got out of this prison, there's nowhere on this planet I could go. There's nothing here. And so he gets to choose. He gets to choose his own team to lead the next mission. And for some reason, what has stuck with me out of everything in Last Chance series more than any other scene, the scene that's more vivid to me is the first person Cage. He goes to the cell and he's like, hey, do you want a chance to get off this planet? I see your kill record. It's pretty impressive. However, it does say you killed a lot of women. And the guy's like, yeah, I did. They're in the line of fire. And he was like, 30 times? And he's like, 30 times. And Cage was like, well, I can't have someone that's just going to massacre civilians on my watch here, so this isn't for you. And the guy was like, okay. You know, he was just so indifferent. He was so indifferent. On top of that, Colonel Schaefer had his sentence extended to life. Instead of 10 years, he got a life sentence just so that he could be on Cage's periphery. And just that level of indifference that, like, okay, here, hey, look, this guy, he fucked you over, but there's a chance to get out of it. It's a last chance. And then the guy just turned it down. I don't know. Pretty big. Getting back, though, the main plot hook for this one, just ignore it. I was kind of just along for the ride on this. Just ignore it. Just ignore it. So I was talking about the weird boy. They see the weird boy at the beginning, and yeah, the weird boy does some magical stuff, and he fights the demons, and then he explodes. Now, I'm more or less under the impression that all magical power comes from the warp. Maybe even the Emperor's? I mean, maybe he sends it there, he's got his own bastion, and it comes out, or maybe, but okay, never mind. No, that doesn't make sense. Maybe the Emperor has the ability, and some select servants have the ability to channel the Emperor's power. Maybe the Emperor has a power. No, I'm talking myself out of this. No, never mind. No, there are distinct powers. Because Gork and Mork, I don't think they exist in the warp. I don't know if the Eldar gods exist in the warp. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think they do. Well, whatever. I guess then, since Gork and Mork are a different place than Korn and Zange, I guess you could have some sort of chain reaction, which would be huge. But this shit just takes it off the rails. So they capture a weird boy, and they keep it sedated, and that's basically what the Grot does. That's the Grot is a Deus ex machina to keep the weird boy sedated. And so what they want to do is they want to explode the orc in the upper atmosphere of the planet. They're like the Citrix. Yeah, the Citrix Maledictum or something terrible, something like it, is like floating through the sky. So they get everyone on board. See, here's why I don't understand this. All right, they basically make it back to Imperial lines, no. Cage goes on this stupid idea to just go hijack a shuttle and then take the weird boy to orbit. And he didn't really think it through that much. And so he's like, go away, Colonel. We don't need you. So Colonel shows up, and he has Battle Brothers and Sisters of Battle, and they show up, and they save the day. But then the part that doesn't make sense to me is at the end of the book, they get everyone in the shuttle. They get every one of the survivors in the shuttle. The Space Marines don't go because they're like, you're expendable. We're not, which was kind of funny. But everyone, the Cage's last bodyguards, his last. I think the civilians actually make it out. I don't think they go with him. I think they actually sent the civilians safety. So Cage succeeded in saving like 20 to 30 people, which was commendable. I think he pats himself on the back, and I think he should as well. There's the Dune people, and then there's the Sister of Battle. So there's like these 4 or 5 different factions. Oh, yeah, and then there's the last Chancers that didn't mutiny. They end up all getting in the shuttle with Lieutenant Cage and Colonel Schaefer. And they fly up into this warp fuckery. And, the pilot, they do a great job of establishing the pilot really quickly. She's this hot shot. She doesn't give a shit. They ask her, they're like, this is going to be probably a one-way trip, right? She's like, beats being landed. And as you can imagine, all hell breaks loose. As soon as they reach the event horizon of the phenomena, all hell breaks loose. And there's a lot of shooting that goes on the deck. Basically, what they wanted to do is they wanted to throw the weird boy in the airlock, jettison the airlock, and then he would somehow interact with the warp space and explode it or implode it or some sort of ode it and tear it apart. But it was dumb. I liked the way it was resolved, though. So basically, while all the secondary characters are in this massive melee, I think they might even be trying to kill each other, or there's demons on the ship or something. Cage and the lieutenant and then Schaefer, they're trying to get the weird boy off the ship, but then they realize the airlock is the only safe part of the ship, or the boat. So they basically let everyone sacrifice themselves so they can get in the airlock. And then the weird boy detonates and explosive decompression. And I don't know. If someone came to me and they was like, hey, you need to take mid-hammer, or I'm sure people call this new hammer. You need to take I call it mid-hammer. You need to take mid-hammer and turn it to new hammer. What I would do is what Gav Thorpe did here. And, they got stuck because of warp fuckery. They got stuck in the airlock of that blown-up shuttle for 50 years. And so they get back, and people are like, oh, there's a Primarch. And Cage is like, there's a Primarch? Wow, this is great. But then he was like, well, shit, if they had to bring a Primarch back, how bad could things be? But he's kind of like, Cage and Schaefer are kind of just like brought into the new Hammer world. And I think you're going to see some more of them. I don't know. It's kind of hard. I wish that I had a better. What can you see here? It's kind of gritty. It's kind of like. Let's judge the book by its cover, okay? There's the hero guy. I'm pretty sure that's Schaefer. He's got this like really like kind of like a grimace on his face. The guy behind him, some super bulked out battle dude, and then there's Lori right there. She looks like a weird clone or something because she's a weird clone or something. And then there's the battle suits in the background. It's grim, all right? It's grim dark, but it's got these like sort of like almost like an 80s or a 70s like action hero, sort of like the last chance, or sort of like it's big but it's grounded. By being small, I don't know. But this one, I mean, now you got the same character, and look at him. He's having so much fun throwing that frag grenade. You can't really see it. It's so easy, but he's smiling. And there's just the colors are brighter and everything's just done up just so much like, well, I guess the colors aren't brighter. It's got that, I don't know. The artwork's dumb. Sorry, the artwork's different, and it kind of just encapsulates this new Hammer sort of like direction that everything's going towards, where everything's clean. Okay, well, no, I would even say that this is more stylized, perhaps even more clean than what's going on over here. I guess there's just like this clean grit. There's this clean grit where everybody's silhouette just comes out to be so like slight. Everyone's got these like slight tall builds now. Whereas before, I mean, this is clearly heroic scale, at least to some degree. There's this cartoony stylization here, and this obsession with muscles and muscle mass and armor that makes them bigger and these massive guns. And then, you know, on this one, everything, they're so much more heroic. Okay, this is heroic scale, but these guys are just so much more refined. No, maybe not refined. I don't like the new style, the way things are going. You know, I'll end up saying that a bit here and there. Overall, you know, I'm happy with what this did for me because it got me to reread this one with a different kind of with a different light, you know. Cage the Redeemed. I always assume, you know, I don't know. I don't know if this book botches his redemption or not. I honestly, coming into this, I was going to say no. It absolutely does not. This is a completely valid fourth chapter in the last chapters. In the last chancers. But I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a lot of people not disappointed. Okay, look, it's a fun read. Okay, regardless. If you want to get the most out of this, just don't even pick this. Just don't even pick this up. Don't pick this up. Don't touch it. All right. If you're getting into the series, just pick this one up. You know, they'll give you all the exposition pretty quickly. It's a quick read. It's a fun read, and I can say that this, you know, these are only like 276 pages long, so they're actually kind of short. They're actually kind of short. I after going through everything over again, I am genuinely baffled with how much goes on in this few pages. Okay, the whole Tyranid battle thing, you know, the entire like setup for this book, and mind you, you know, we've got a tribal guide looking at the sunset. We've got the last chancers debating about whether they're going to defect. We've got like one or two assaults on the Sisters of Battle monastery, and then we've got the aftermath where Cronin he just starts, you know, he just starts speaking as if he's the you know, he starts speaking from the imperial texts, the holy, maybe the Book of Lorga. I don't know exactly what they read. That's all 30 pages. When they go to Deliverance, the plant planet, that was like 30 or 40 pages, maybe 25. When they go, like there's so much that happens in such a little amount of time. That all in all, the series is good, but this one kind of just compromises a little bit. However, I like Cage. I'm willing. I'm just willing to let him have it. You know, it doesn't bode well on me for saying that, but the Schaefer between these two books, identical dude. He's an identical dude, except he's taken out of being in charge. So you kind of see him like squirm and kind of like, he doesn't have a beard, but he strokes his beard whenever Cage does something. So you're kind of thinking, and Cage is also thinking like, oh, am I doing the right thing? Is he going to call me out later? And so that was kind of fun. Cage is almost a different character. He speaks the same way, and his thought process is very consistent, but the things he does is very different, very, very different. Maybe you could call it character growth. But if you're gonna enjoy this one, you just got to give it some gimmies. Go ahead, check out The Last Chancers. I don't like Gav Thorpe one bit, but he exceeded himself in The Last Chancers. He has some Eldar novels, which I wouldn't recommend, maybe just because I don't find the Eldar interesting. But all in all, I mean, I just, when I buy a book twice, it's because I really fucking like it, and I feel like I had a pretty fun couple of weeks with these.